What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today we are going to delve into a hidden gem of the calisthenics world. There has been a lot of talk recently regarding the most optimal way to hit each muscle group, and back training is no exception. We have heard the debate around pull-ups versus iliac pull-downs. And although I have a very clear bias towards pull-ups, I still believe that iliac pull-downs are an exercise that has its own set of benefits and that you can include in your program and that you're going to see good results from. So I'm going to talk about the benefits of both because there's an exercise that I believe combines the most important aspects of the weighted pull-up and the iliac pull-down into one nice package. So stay tuned to learn about this movement. Let's start off with the benefits of the pull-ups. The main aspect I think that makes pull-ups so attractive for people that want big bags is because it's very simple. You just get strong at pull-ups, either body weight or weighted. With body weight, you do more reps, then you jump in variation, and that's it. With weights, it's the same thing, but instead of variation, you use weight. So you max out the rep range, add weight, max out the rep range, add weight, and so on. With this, you're going to get really fucking strong. You're going to get a fucking huge and especially wide back because the pull-ups not only develop the width, but also a little bit of thickness, but overall it's going to be a width movement. So this simple approach with a high progression capacity is very appealing to most people, and it doesn't take to be a galaxy brain to implement. And this will lead, of course, to a more sustainable approach to lifting, which will lead again to even more gains. So that's like the main selling point of pull-ups. Also, they are very convenient because, as I previously said, you don't need to have plates everywhere you go. You can just use your body weight. And if you know how to manipulate leverages and tempo to make it hard, you're going to have a very nasty lat stimulus. On top of that, the reason why I believe the pull-up in itself as a movement is very effective at growing your lats is because of the stretch. It's your whole body weight pulling on your lats. And if you're doing weighted, even more. With pull-downs, you don't get that. I believe that pull-ups are better than pull-downs because of the stretch. With pull-downs, the machine is doing part of the work, so you don't get as good of a stretch as with pull-ups. With pull-ups, you get your whole weight, again, pulling on your lats for every single rep. So I think this makes more sense to have it as your main hypertrophy movement. I still believe that, again, lat pull-downs can be used as an accessory to pull-ups, but definitely not a replacement. Now, if you want to emphasize the stretch even more, because you can manipulate your body weight through space, you can assume an L-sit position, so you have spinal flexion. Try doing that on pull-downs. Unless you have a very particular setup, I doubt you'll be able to do it. With pull-ups, you just assume an L-sit position and you bias the lower lats and stretch the lats even further, making the movement even more difficult. And if you want to bias it even more, because you probably have heard multiple times about biomechanics gurus tell you that pull-ups are bad, they usually refer to the pronated shoulder width apart version, the vanilla pull-up, if you will. But if you close the grip and assume a neutral or supinated position, then you're going to bias the lats even more. With this, you're going to get a nasty lat stretch and a nasty lat contraction. So those are the benefits of the pull-ups. As you can see, a very simple, effective, and high progression capacity movement that you can basically do anywhere. The iliac pull-downs, the main benefits I can list is that, first of all, it is a stable movement, so it allows you to really focus on stimulating the lats. It allows for a better mind-muscle connection because of the rotating handles, which allows you to accommodate yourself throughout the whole movement. And also, because it's unilateral, it prevents imbalances. So those are the benefits for both, and as you can see, they are very unique in what they offer. But what if we could combine these? What if we can take the most important aspects of the iliac pull-downs and the most important aspects of pull-ups and combine it into one? Well, what you would get is the ring one-arm chin-up assisted version. So that can be either mantle chin-ups, band assisted, finger assisted, or archer chin-ups. This movement, I believe, is very underrated and people should be implementing them more into their programs, especially if they like lower rep work. Because, let's just start with the first point, body weight with this movement is fucking hard, like super hard. You will truly get humbled because if you think you're strong at pull-ups, even weighted pull-ups, you will feel like a weak little bastard when you jump onto just doing one hand at a time with two fingers assisting. So even if you are going for high reps, you're not going to get high reps. So that's the first thing. It is very hard just from the get-go, which allows you to use it as a weighted pull-up substitute. You can start off your session with one-arm chin-up variations, and you're going to get the same stimulus you would get from having 2 plates or even 3 plates hanging while you're doing pull-ups. The only downside is that you have to do one arm at a time, which I'm going to argue it is actually a positive if you know how to program for it, because it prevents imbalances. If you have one lat that is bigger than the other, well, you can do your one-arm chin-ups and correct that pretty quickly. And not only that, the problem you'll see a lot with unilateral movements is that you usually have to go higher reps because of the unilateral nature. It is usually either very unstable or it is an isolation movement. But in this specific case, you have a heavy unilateral movement, which I believe is going to correct imbalance way faster because you get more stimulus per set because of the higher intensity. Also, a good aspect is that because you're doing it on rings, you have free wrist rotations. That not only opens the door to having a lot of variation, so you can have like pronated, neutral, supinated, or everything in between. But on top of that, you can also move it throughout the whole rep to adjust to your anthropometry and also to make it less taxing on the joints. And not only can you adjust your wrist, you can also adjust your body. You can pull in a fashion that targets the lats optimally, which increases mind-muscle connection, but with a heavy movement instead of being laying on a bench doing it for 15 reps. On top of that, you can adjust difficulty to fit into a certain rep range. So for mental chin-ups, the more you lower the rings, the harder it's going to be. For finger assisted, the less finger assisting you have, the harder. For bands, the less resistance the band has, the harder the movement's going to be. And for archer chin-ups, basically you have to resort to tempo manipulation in this case. But it is still just from the get-go a very hard movement, so I doubt you probably are going to need to do anything like that. Also, I want to say that you can implement the L-sit trick on this movement as well, especially on mantle chin-ups and on archer chin-ups. I think that's going to come in golden because the movement by itself is pretty stable, very comparable to weighted pull-ups. I would say even more because you don't have weight dangling back and forth, which you have to stabilize to do the rep properly. Also, it is a very grindable movement because most often than not, you're going to be using a supinated grip, which I have found is more grindable than the pronated grip. So that's another aspect. Also, it's going to keep your weight in check because every pound you add to your frame is very noticeable, like very noticeable. If you're in a bulk and your one-arm chin-up reps are maintaining or even increasing, you're making solid gains, man, because usually it's going to decrease because every pound gain is going to affect your performance very much. Now, in terms of arm development, this is something I want to touch on. You have heard the argument that chin-ups are enough for biceps. That's BS. That's total bullshit. Even if you do a very biceps biased variation, that's a that's a tongue twister there. Even if you do that, it's not going to be that effective. But with this, because you're doing it with one hand only, you're stretching the biceps to a tremendous extent. Also, the long head of the triceps, because let's not forget, you use your long head of the triceps on chin-ups. And you're going to get a way better stimulus in your arms compared to just regular chin-ups. Now, is it going to give you 20-inch arms? No. You still should include isolation, but it's an extra that you get from doing this variation. Also, I'm going to say be careful with this movement. Start out slowly and slowly again with at a slow pace. Build up to it because again it can be very tough on the joints, and because you get a very nasty stretch on both the biceps and the triceps, you can tear something. So be careful and start slowly. This is the only downside of the movement, which is not really. It's just prepare for the movement before doing it. Don't just jump into the hardest variation and try to get 2 reps on it without previous experience. You're going to tear your bicep off. I talked about low stabilization, which is good for hypertrophy. Compared to the regular one-arm chin-up, especially, Because the regular one arm chin up, you have to rotate your body as you're doing the rep to properly do it, especially if you're doing it on a straight bar. And on top of that, you're at a disadvantage. You're like this, right? So you have to pull your body weight and twist it so you can get like this, which has a technical requirement, even though it's mostly strength. But we don't want that. So what we're going to do is just assist, so we don't have to practice that scapular movement. And also just by itself, the amount of strength you have to do just regular one arm chin ups without like any assistance is insane. So most people are not going to get a one arm chin up. But the assisted versions can be hypertrophy substitute, if you will. Now, weighted ring one arm chin ups. Should you do it? I would say that don't. Like, there's no reason to it, but you can if you want to. Like, I don't see anything wrong, but you should be adding like minimal amounts of weight, like 1 pound, like 2 pounds, maybe 5 pounds if you get really, really strong. And then once you get like very, very strong, you can add like 20 pounds tops, but I don't think you'll be adding weight, and I don't think it's necessary. I think that people that are going to add weight to this variation are not strong enough to handle it or to deserve it, quote unquote, and then they're just doing it out of ego to be like, oh, I can do one arm chin ups with weight. I'm too strong for my own sake. And also I'm going to say for this specific variation that technique takes priority. If you want to get jacked with this movement, first refine technique to a T. Like, it should be perfect execution every single time, and your back is going to thank you, your joints are going to thank you, and you're going to get fucking soul. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and that it was informative to you. And as always,